This week, Black communities and racial justice allies across the country are mourning the death of Ahmaud Arbery, who was shot and killed right outside his home in February. I'm joined now by civil rights activist Chivona Newsome to talk about this tragedy and how we can stand with the victim's family to seek justice for the loss of their son. Chivona is a Bronx native and the co-founder of Black Lives Matter Greater New York. She's a civil rights leader at the forefront of the new civil rights movement and a candidate for Congress in New York's 15th district. She has dedicated her adult life to the betterment of her community and our nation as a whole. Her parents met at a civil rights rally in the 60s, so you can say that she was born for this fight. Chivona, thanks for joining us on the program.
Great to see you again, Juliana. Thank you for having me.
So for people who are not aware of what happened to Mr. Arbery, could you talk about what happened?
Arbery, Ahmaud, and you've seen all the hashtags run with Ahmaud. At first, I would like to give my deepest and heartfelt condolences to his family and promise that we're going to fight for justice. There's my vow to that. But he was jogging in his neighborhood. He was jogging at 1 p.m. February 23rd, jogging through a neighborhood, and it was a modern day lynching. He was hunted down, and the world has been shook by the images coming out. A few weeks prior to this, I want to give a super shout out to I Am City and Sharp Bates because they reached out to us here in New York for our assistance in the planning of that. But they have been leading the fight on the ground, and they're the reason why we're having this conversation today. But he was another young Black man, and it just reminds us of Trayvon Martin walking home with Skittles in a can of iced tea. It's just happening around our nation.
And this was a father and son team, the father, an ex-police person, just gunning down this young man. And really, there wasn't much talk about it until the video of the death came out. Why is it that people don't care unless they can see the murder themselves?
It's not only that people don't care because they don't see the murder, because I receive tons of videos. You see them through social media chats. People don't care, unfortunately, until the press, thank you for covering this story, start talking about it. And once the press starts talking about it in a hashtag, unfortunately, we call them hashtags when there's so much more. This is a human being. This is someone's son. This is a community member. But until celebrities start sharing, the media starts talking about it, there is no justice. It took 74 days for the prosecutor to arrest these people, for the police to go and arrest these murderers. And this happens all the time. If we don't get any press and people wonder why we shut down highways, why we hold press conferences, we just did a caravan for justice, I want to say last Thursday. If we don't do these things and disrupt, and I'm so grateful to the protesters and activists down in Georgia, there would be no justice if it was not for protesters.
And protesters are having to risk their lives now because of the coronavirus. They need to maintain a social distancing. Can you talk about how the coronavirus has impacted civil rights work?
Yes, I've never participated until last week into a caravan of justice. So we had about 100 cars out in Brooklyn because NYPD has been found. That's New York Police Department, because I know you have international viewers. The New York City Police Department has been practicing racist social distancing. My brother and I were in the midst of this. We were delivering food to the needy during the People's Food Program, and we saw the police. Yeah, we were delivering food.
Wrong. Yeah.
So I actually was in the midst of a false arrest. My brother, Ahmaud Newsome, who I co-founded Black Lives Matter Greater New York with, we were delivering food. And from our show, Cop Watch America, the activists from Georgia were also on that show. We saw the community being brutalized. We saw the tear-stained and red eyes of people who had been maced, that used the chemical agent, and the police were being very aggressive. And we jumped in and we maintained the social distancing. And that's the same way you practice cop watching, as it's called, even if it wasn't COVID-19. But my brother was arrested. He was later given a summons when they realized who he was and who I am. But unfortunately, most Black people don't have the privilege of being able to have their lawyer call right away to get them out of jail, or being a congressional candidate, or knowing how to navigate the media. And the numbers were released for that too. So For us, we really can't sit inside. So our team members have been wearing face shields and masks and gloves and sanitizing, but I refuse to let any pandemic stop justice.
I noticed
So
that Governor Bill de Blasio here in New York, supposed, pro- progressive mayor of New York City, whatever that means, was on going all over the media today saying, we should not be protesting at this time. There are different ways of making your voices heard. He made mention of people showing up at the Capitol, but they didn't talk about which protest it was. It kind of left it to the viewer or the listener to just assume it was these white nationalists open up the city protesters. But is it possible he could have been talking about Black Lives Matter movements?
he was absolutely talking about Black Lives Matter movement, especially Black Lives Matter Greater New York. After my brother was arrested and it's garnered quite a lot of attention, I released a statement and I'm still waiting for my apology from Mayor Bill de Blasio, and I'm demanding justice. He and New York City Police Commissioner Shea tried to pretend that we were lying. He tried to say that Black people were not getting arrested at an alarming rate. And then the police reports came out, and 81% of the summonses received were from Black people had received them, followed by Hispanic people, and I think one white person. When you see in other communities of non-Black people in its Central Park, which is our most famous park, people are practically laying on top of each other. The cops are treating them with respect, handing out refreshments, handing out face masks.
Mhm.
In our community, and Commissioner Shea had the audacity to say that the police were using a light touch. And you see the videos of Black men being beaten to the ground, slapped around, and knees in their back with officers sitting on their head. So it's hard for me to believe any reports out of the mouths of people who are lying.
Well, there you have it.
Yeah, that's that.
Um, what do you think justice for the Arbery family will look like?
Immediate justice would be the arrest of William Bryant. We know the father and son duo, the McMichaels, have been arrested, but the gentleman who shot, and I hate to use that term, but the person who shot the video of the murder, he boxed brother Ahmaud in. Mr. Arbery was only left with one choice: to come his way, Mr. Bryant's way, or to go into the McMichaels way. So I believe that he is an accomplice, and I believe that he should also be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. Now, justice for this family would be the Department of Justice stepping in. And we know that they failed us in the past when we seen with Officer Daniel Pantaleo, who Black Lives Matter played a huge role in getting him fired, which is extremely rare. I personally wish he was behind bars, but the DOJ let the statute of limitations run out in the Eric Gardner murder case. So swift action from the DOJ, because Georgia does not have a hate crime law. And this is absolutely a hate crime. And everyone is lying. Even the prosecutor who recused himself in Brunswick County, he laid out a defense for these people who are currently in custody. So the DOJ needs to investigate this as a hate crime and also a cover up by their administration and government down in that county.
Is it not also, could it possibly be considered terrorism? I mean, the guy was one of the murderers was a retired cop. Uh, you know, he should know better that you can't shoot another person. You know what I mean?
Georgia actually has stand your ground laws, which we see not work well for people who look like me in Florida. And him being a retired law enforcement, he knew what his limitations were and he knew the proper protocol. He was no longer a police officer. So his duty as a citizen was to follow him in a car, not with an armed weapon, not with force, and call three simple numbers, 911, if he suspected this man, Ahmaud, of a crime. Even though video clearly shows from the homeowner as well that there was no crime, he knew that he was not supposed to go out there and murder and modern day lynch anyone. He knew better than any of the other people who committed crimes against my people, Black people. He
And
knew this.
he also knows that he probably won't be brought to justice, it seems like.
And it seemed as so because the DA's office there declined to prosecute. They lied to Mr. Arbery's mother. They told him that he was a burglary suspect that went wrong, and it took 74 days for two people to be arrested. And I'm so happy that you used the term terrorism, because we see now that white supremacy, which this is deep rooted in, because he felt that he had authority over a black man. He knew that being former law enforcement and being white, that he would get away with this crime. He is a terrorist. And I'm happy that you use that term. And I'm happy that the United States government is starting to realize that this is domestic terrorism. But what we need now, states shouldn't have to, and people and families and attorneys of these families should not have to petition with the Department of Justice to do anything. This should be a federal standard. When crimes like this happen, and it's clear from all of us who have seen the video, the DOJ needs to be swift to justice.
The DOJ isn't going to do shit if I
I'm happy. It's a cemetery. It's a mausoleum.
Yeah.
Literally, I've marched around it. I've shut down the streets personally of DC. They gave us false hope to try to quiet us. And then I woke up the morning, this is referring to Eric Gardner Pantaleo, and my face is on the cover of the New York Times. And it's like the DOJ does not prosecute. So I have firsthand experience with the Department of No Justice.
It is the Department of No Justice. What can our viewers do to stand with the Arbery family?
To stand with the Arbery family, thank you so much to everyone who was hashtagged and retweeted, to the people who are putting themselves in Georgia on the front line, who are sharing his story, because this is making justice happen quickly, to continue to follow the case, because we have so many cases of police brutality, so many injustice. Don't forget Ahmaud. Remember that this is a man who would have been 26 years old on Mother's Day. Remember his family grieving. Yeah. Remember that he was a star football player in his community, that he was a shining light. His mother said that he was a kind and compassionate person. Remember that. And also, when we go to the ballots right now, because I have to say this, I am a candidate. I do believe that nothing will happen for any marginalized people unless we have legislation. Vote in people who will represent your community. Vote for people who have a history of fighting injustice, because we shouldn't have to petition. We shouldn't have to risk facing COVID if we had real representation and elected officials who weren't afraid of being anti-cop, who weren't afraid of ruffling the status quo. So that's what your viewers can continue to do.
Chivona, how are they coming after you up there in the Bronx?
Very.
There's a lot of muscle trying to put you down in your.
It's tons of muscle. At first, they tried to ignore me. They realized that couldn't happen.
Oh.
I was like in a media blackout. People wrote me off as someone who had no history of leadership.
Except for me.
Yeah, except for you, Julianna. You've been a day one supporter. And now I'm being targeted by the NYPD. So that's fun. The day of the actual Caribbean March, they tried to tow my campaign truck. I've received a series of speeding tickets while not ticketing. My brother's been falsely arrested, but nothing will stop this fight to justice. Nothing will. And especially the People's Food Program, which we were doing because our local, state, and federal government have failed people in the Bronx. We are now the epicenter of the coronavirus, and people were hungry before this virus. There were so many environmental justices happening. So you think a little nudge from the police is going to stop me a few speeding tickets? You lost your mind. We're going.
What are you going to do if you get in and you're the next congressperson from the 15th district? How would you handle what is happening in policing? Would there be some effect that you might be able to have from your position there?
Yes, absolute effect. This needs to be a federal law. I hope no one steals this, but I want it to be called the I Can't Breathe Act. Actually, I'd be happy if another person drafted this bill. But officers who falsify police reports, officers who deny medical attention in cases like Andrew Kearse, officers who don't know how to respond to people like Deborah Danner, Delron Smalls, and a whole host of other people, they need to be federally prosecuted. This needs to be applied across all states, and being in Congress gives me the power to do so. We can't leave matters into interpretation from the local level. because we see that everyone's kind of in cahoots, what we see with the Arbery case. This man was a friend of the police. He was probably considered a pillar in his community. He served. So we need federal legislation on how to handle this. And I think that the way we break this blue wall of silence is by officers knowing, bad cops knowing that they will be prosecuted, they will lose their jobs, and their lives will be destroyed. And then they will stop brutalizing Black and brown people.
I hope so, man. It's Georgia.
No hate crime law, a place where they're known for lynching Black people. I
Yeah.
really wish Stacey Abrams would have won down there and it was none of that gerrymandering and voter suppression. But we need more people like her and like myself to continue to run and maintain office, because that's the only way we'll have real change.
I'm sure if she was the governor there, they would not be opening up Georgia so that large communities of, oppressed communities would be getting the friggin' coronavirus. It's just insane
Yeah.
what's happening.
And you see, Mayor Keisha Bottoms advised her people, the people, her constituents, not to go outside. And we seen after Georgia lifted the ban that there were 1,000 new cases 3 days later. 1,000 new cases of coronavirus. I love that it's what I believe is to be a war on the poor, an extermination of the 13% of the Black population. It's only 13% of us. If they open up states with predominantly high numbers of Black people, of course, we're going to die at an alarming rate, the same way we're seeing here in the Bronx, the way we saw in Milwaukee, the way we saw in Chicago. And I've called on the governor for this, Governor Cuomo, the New York State governor. When I looked at the maps, I'm no scientist. I just studied economics, but I'm no scientist. And I saw from the maps that, especially my district, which is the poorest congressional district in the nation, people were contracting and dying at an alarming rate. So we asked for more testing sites. We asked for community organizations to go in and enforce social distancing, because I knew, and the people who signed onto that letter with me, that NYPD was incapable of handling social distancing when it came to Black people. So this just goes into strong leadership and legislation. We need leaders who understand the problem and know how to handle it.
You can find out more about Chivona's campaign and support her from no matter where you're coming from, because amazing. Would this not be good? In you and AOC, you guys, the Bronx is growing up a lot of great folks. I'm just saying.
We got Jenny from the block, Colin Powell. It's a lot of great. Well, politics aside, he went really far. Yeah, we have a lot of great people out of the Bronx. You give us a foot in the door, and we'll just keep going.
Chivona Newsome for Congress.com is where you can find Chivona's work. She's running for Congress in the New York 15th District. She is also the co-founder of Black Lives Matter Greater New York. Chivona, thank you so much. Appreciate you coming on and talking.
Thank you so much for having me, Juliana. And please, I advise everyone to stay safe. Please stay in quarantine. And if you can't listen to your state advisories, please follow the World Health Organization's advisories on staying safe from COVID-19. Thank you guys, and God bless.
Thank you, Chivona. Thank you so much. And I look forward to continuing to follow your campaign. Give you some good media attention here, right?
I appreciate it every time.
You're watching Act.tv. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe to our channel down below. We bring you interviews with leaders, thought leaders, regular leaders, anyone that's interesting in the progressive movement, about 10 times a week. So keep your eye here and share us on social media. If you're watching on Facebook, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate all of the comments. I appreciate Betty fighting back against the person who's saying that the coronavirus is just the flu. So, you do some good work and they're always going to be trolls. So thank you so much for watching us on Facebook. We are here Monday through Thursday, giving you the kind of activist headlines, information that you might need, and interviews with interesting people doing interesting things. We hope you stay well, and we will see you tomorrow.